right, I've been waiting for this for a while because it's ex-Montrealers on the same call. Yay! Les Montréalais, allons-y les Canadiens, and all that stuff. So, welcome, Greg, to the Leaders Who Care series.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
no, my pleasure. We would do it in French, but I don't think that would do very very well.
I've been gone for 20 years. It's going to be rusty.
We'll just say we'll use a couple of keywords thrown in and see if people know. But um, obviously, the best way to start is, and the keyword here is briefly introduce yourself. Men do this more than women, but the first thing they say about themselves is their business stuff. So we'll get to the business stuff in a minute or a few minutes. If you can just talk about where you're from originally, kind of gave that one away. Where you are now, family. If you want to tell everybody your favorite color, but most importantly, if there's something you've never told anybody ever, and this is where you want to
And
reveal
you want
it.
me to, yeah, you want me to reveal it too while we're being recorded and posted
Absolutely. What's the
online?
use of doing it when you're not recorded?
Yeah, of course. Sure. Well, so my name is Greg Charlap. As you alluded to, I am born and raised in Montreal, Canada. I have a wife and two boys, 18 and 14. And I guess you said we wouldn't get into the business aspect yet, so I could just say that I've lived in Montreal for 30 years of my life, and then my wife and I decided to move to Los Angeles. So we packed up the car 20 years ago, and here we are.
Oh, so you met in Montreal,
We did. Yeah, we met in Montreal, got married in Montreal, spent a couple of years there together, and then decided that we wanted to go.
and it wasn't neither of you because of acting.
No, no, nothing to do with acting. I don't think I would have still been here if I were pursuing the acting career.
No, that's pretty cool because some people come here to dream to act and that's it, and then they stay or something like that. So I always like to find some threads and stuff about asking people what you were like as a kid or a teenager from Montreal, where it's maple syrup, ice hockey. Were you the entrepreneur lemonade stand guy or paper route? Did you play sports, music? What were you like?
I think if there's one word to describe it, it would be athletic. I loved sports, but I love playing them more. And coming from Canada and living in the Great White North, if you don't play hockey, or if you can't figure out a sport to play in the winter, you're going to be bored. And so I played hockey. I went skiing. I pretty much did anything outside. Hockey, as you know, is a religion in Montreal. I grew up completely immersed in the culture, but I love to play. And I played hockey until I graduated from high school. And
Cool.
yeah, it was great. I guess you could say I was quite a shy kid. I lacked a lot of self confidence. And I think athletics helped me. It helped me come out of my shell quite a bit and, being part of a team. So I really did feel valued.
I assume the Canadiens are your favorite team.
Still,
Still
painfully.
good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I think the last time we won a cup, I was in my teens,
1993.
92, 93. That's right.
Jacques Demers, I think, was the coach.
Can't remember the coach, but I certainly remember the feeling and watching
Yeah.
us win it in my parents' living room. It was fantastic. And
Underdogs. That wasn't, yeah.
it saddened me because the first two times that my kids saw the Stanley Cup were because the Kings won it here, which I'm happy about, and I am a Kings fan for sure. But
Yeah.
I always pictured the Canadians winning again before the Kings won twice.
I know it's not the same as it was. Oh, there's a lot of good hockey players now, but it's not the same as it was. Didn't play any musical instrument or stuff like that.
I played the flute,
No
and
way.
yeah, it wasn't my choice. My parents said you can play any instrument as long as it's the flute.
Oh, that's a choice.
It was quiet, right? So they wanted something. If I had to practice all the time, they would prefer that over the drums.
Oh, I was going to say, or you're singing. Maybe that
So
was
it
it.
was it was a so it was short lived, but yes, I did play it for a brief period.
Oh, the flute's cool. I was once on Machu Picchu, and we no Masada, and we went up. I was on Machu Picchu, but this was Masada, and we went up. Fact, long story short, there was a number of us, and this girl from Portugal happened to have a flute for the sunrise. It was spectacular. Yeah.
Beautiful. It wasn't to charm a snake.
No, but it was, we were speaking to God up there. It was like amazing. So,
Yeah, I wish I'd had the opportunity. I was in Lima, but unfortunately Machu Picchu was closed, so I couldn't get up there.
oh yeah, Machu Picchu. But Masada, this was actually a mistake. It was actually Masada, and it was like a religious experience almost. With the flute. I like the flute. The flute's cool. So keep playing it. Keep it in your
Yeah,
back pocket.
sure.
Um, let's start talking about your journey. On firstly, education. We're both McGill alum.
Mhm.
You earned your of commerce, as we called it, in sales management and entrepreneurship. So I did mine in accounting. You were more interesting than I was. What were you envisioning at the time?
I think I was just determined to be an entrepreneur, and I loved everything about it. It was something that I could relate to, and it was something wherever I went, I could not shut off my brain. And my wife would always make fun of me. I was, when we went away, I would sit by the pool and then I would look towards the hotel and calculate how many rooms they had, how much revenue are they getting per night. Go to the restaurant, how many seats do they have, and are they occupied all the time? So it was just really ingrained in me. And so I guess you could say I was young, I was ambitious, and extremely determined. And in fact, at McGill, I ended up starting a business in school while I was doing my undergraduate degree. I just made a streetwear line with a buddy of mine, and we did quite well. And I have to say, it really enhanced my education.
I
And
bet.
people do say, right, when you do your MBA, it behooves you to get experience in life first, and then go back to school and do it, because it will really enhance the experience.
Hmm.
And I really had that experience with my undergrad. And I think that creating a business at that young age and being involved in all the facets of it was really, really beneficial for me.
Yeah, that's fascinating because I remember different but the same interviewing a young man years ago, and he said he didn't really have a lot of experience. And I saw the last thing on his resume at the bottom was he ran the Santa Claus parade. And I was the first Jewish guy to run the Santa Claus parade in Winnipeg, by the way. Um, which is probably what prompted me to look at it even more. But I would have looked at it anyway. And I said, yeah, I guess you don't really have a lot. What about the Santa Claus parade? What did you do? Well, I had to speak to the city. I had to get permits, have to do a budget. I had to get sponsorships, and I had to speak to the sponsors because one of them wanted to go first and third, and the other one wanted to go in the same spot. And then what happens if it rained? Did we have an alternate? And and so on and so on and so on, and all that. And then you have to report afterwards what happened and get the media going. Then, and I said, yeah, you don't have any experience at all. So
That's
different
funny.
scenario, but
Yeah,
entrepreneurial,
of
and
course.
it's that hands-on is fantastic. You know, we found that our firm, Fifth Element, on the basis that leaders in their businesses or organizations can do way better when they're doing good at the same time. I noticed you, and correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of alternated between being, let's say, the president of a manufacturing company, which is successfully sold, to then being in sales director positions with global engagement, if I believe, um, and so it was interesting how you moved. But then I'd like you to share your story and how this evolved for you, where and also to your point, did that provide the foundation financially, the knowledge, experience to then take on and lead two other endeavors, one tennis kids and one pampered tot, different goals, different everything.
Yeah.
Starting with that, and then I'll ask you another question after that.
Sure. Well, I think so. My first business you're referring to is manufacturing a gold mark hosiery. I manufactured socks and tights. Very weird business as a 22-year-old to be in, by the way. But it was a conversation starter. But then after we sold that, we moved. So that was a business in Montreal. So then we moved to Los Angeles, and
Mm,
that really opened my eyes in ways that I never really imagined. There's an abundance of everything here in the United States, but in California specifically. So not only moving as a Canadian boy moving to the land of opportunity, but within the land of opportunity, California is that on steroids, it seems. So there are a lot of new opportunities, abundance. We're at the forefront of everything, discussing, new foods, the environment, lifestyle. When you think about your workday, right, it's a 9 to 5, and that just simply it exists here, but it was very different. The integration between the work and life environment was very different.
right.
So I really enjoyed that. I did end up getting a job down here before I started my next venture. And I think it's important to note for any entrepreneur, it's important to work for someone. And when you work for someone, you're exposed to structure and discipline and how things work and what the best practices are, what to do and what not to do. And it exposes you to the skill set that you need to succeed in entrepreneurship. And so that was, I'll call it a brief stint, but it was like 6 years, like an overnight success, right?
Yeah.
Is a career. But it did expose me to the world. I was representative for our business on a global scale. So I did get to travel around the APAC region and Europe. So that was great. Again, just getting more invaluable working experience. But it was at that company that I started becoming involved in more sustainable aspects of business,
Hmm.
social, corporate social responsibility. I worked for a travel management company. So neutralizing the carbon footprint in air travel was something that was talked about. It was important. Like, how are we going to do that? So, this was 15 years ago, by the way. So, there's a lot more now. But yeah, I mean, things with the carbon fund, buying carbon offsets and stuff like that. So I would say that my experiences with them gave me confidence to pursue my entrepreneurial dreams again. So yes, I did have a brief stint in business and it was great. And it provided some stability so that I can look around for things that I was more interested in. But it was really necessary to have a job and to understand how businesses operate down here. And again, to have the confidence and the discipline, right? The confidence to do what you want to do and the discipline to know when to do it and when not to. And that was important.
I do a
And
lot of sports analogies, and I guess in a way you're saying, being the player helped me be the coach later on, type of deal. And then you get the credibility of the players on your team when you're the coach, that, they trust you, that you've been there before and things like that, that you can put forth. Did it impact um, your passion to take on something like Tennis Kids, make that both economically viable and socially impactful, but also at the same time, um, starting a company like Pampered Tot, which was making it economically viable, also more so, but also socially impactful at the same time. Making an impact for people, community, the whole way. How did that happen? And how did you manage them both together?
so, yeah, and I was actually doing both of them together. There was an overlapping period. With Pampered Tot, that was my main business. And, I started that with my wife out of a need. We had kids, just like, a lot of the founders in the baby sector happened kind of out of a need and this newfound parenting life. But the social responsibility crept in with my job, and it kind of spilled over into my businesses after that. So we created a program which we donated $1 to plant trees for every bag that you refused at checkout. We would plant as 10 trees when you bought a stroller. So we have a buy a stroller, plant a tree program. And I think we were a little bit ahead of our time. I don't think it really didn't affect our bottom line at all. It was kind of like a good marketing gimmick, but it made me feel good.
Sure.
And that was important. I think with Tennis Kids, that was really born out of a duty to pay it forward. My son is an avid tennis player. He started when he was 8 years old, and he was the top 5 in the country for his entire playing career. And now he's headed to college for that. And what gave him his start a was a coach who had a mini net and decided to give tennis lessons to 3-year-olds in preschool. And so I thought that was great. And looking at his life and looking at what tennis does to expose you to such lifelong skills that are really necessary to succeed in life, like honesty and integrity and discipline, responsibility, mental strength, self-confidence, sportsmanship, all of those things. So that was the gift that my son received. And I thought to pay it forward. And the coach had come to me, and he was a little bit in dire straits because, he had this great idea, like a lot of entrepreneurs do, right? But had no real way of executing it, and made some mistakes, had some bad partners, and wasn't making a living out of it. So the only way for me to help him was to become his partner. and which I did, and with the idea of spreading this wonderful sport, which gave access to so many kids. And I was happy to say that at one point, while I was involved, we were in 70 schools in Southern California.
Well,
Yeah. So two very different businesses, but I could say, yeah, but both really with the mission to help people or to do good.
so were there any pampered tots that were in Tennis Kids?
There were actually, yeah, there were. It was funny. One day, someone called and said, "Hey, wait a minute. I noticed that my kid is doing this program, but I just brought a stroller from you. Are you the same? Are you the same Greg?" And so that was a moment. But yeah, definitely had him.
And did Pampered Tot really get started because you had kids?
It did. Yeah. So my firstborn, he was incredibly difficult for the first couple of years, and so we read so much about parenting, and about about products, about parenting, about feeding, you name it. And we found that there was a real void in the marketplace for a store that was able to help us all. Like, when you become a parent, you're a rookie. And wouldn't it be nice to have a place to go that's already curated the products for you and that has knowledge too that they can share with you? And I'm talking, this is now almost 20 years ago.
Mhm.
And it just, something like that didn't exist back then.
No, it's fascinating because, and maybe I'm oversimplifying, but there's so many good things that happen when you're fixing, you're fixing a need, solving a pain, whatnot, and you just go for it. Talk a little bit about the skill sets you have to build the value of a company like that so that it can be sold for a strategic price, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because it's difficult, right? So you start a business and you're always hopeful, right? An entrepreneur wants to have an exit. And, most businesses out there is basically just a job you've created for yourself in a
Right.
small business in America. But the ultimate goal, right, is to be able to sell it. In retail, the sales multiple for us is usually 3 to 4 times earnings. It's not huge because of the industry. There's other industries that are 10, 12 times.
Mm-hmm.
So the question then becomes, what are your assets, and can they appeal to someone to value the business at a higher rate? And if you really search what your business, not just the core of what your business is, but maybe the assets that could be useful in a strategic acquisition. So, understanding that really helped me sell my business. So yes, we sold strollers and car seats and high chairs at the retail level, both in store and online. But the value in our business was in a couple of assets that we had that were particularly useful to a strategic partner. And that's how it came about. And because of that, we were able to sell our business for 10 times EBITDA.
Yeah, it's interesting because I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and people that are in that scenario, and the key word is, making it a strategic sale or a strategic acquisition rather than just a sale or an acquisition, or they're buying it to put you on the shelf because they don't want the competition or whatever the scenario is. And if it's strategic to them, then it is what we call an omni win because they get what they want, it helps their business, and you get what you want. So
That's exactly right. I'm extremely proud that my acquirer also benefited greatly from it. So I did, they did. It was a happy marriage.
and now you're happy. Now your wife's even more pampered, right?
Wow, I don't know.
I'd say you got me with
She's a
marriage.
really,
I
really, yeah.
had to throw that one in there. You know, the fourth industrial revolution has been talked about for sure as being technology. Certainly AI is blasting right now, VR, AR, et cetera, et cetera. But the fifth is really about humanity. And what we have found, with that there's a unique skill that what we call leaders who care have is how to engage in partnerships, how to embrace technologies and not be afraid of them, as well as take care of what we call the well-being of all of your employees, your teams, and whatnot. And well-being meaning financial, physical, and mental, all of those, with the latter being really big these days for all the reasons, so that everybody can achieve their goals. It usually brings a lot of diversity of backgrounds and cultures and expertise and even some egos and everyday challenges that come in. So in our world, we've found that there's and what's happening with a lot of companies we're talking about because of this initiative we're on around um, global partnership for peace and whatnot, that there's an interest in having a non-flick culture, quote unquote, company. I want to talk about that, or have you chat a little bit of your thoughts on the positive benefits of having a way to a process to resolve conflict, having a culture that allows people to have their voices heard and move forward, that type of thing, or not having it.
Yeah, I think for what you're describing, I think everything kind of starts at the top, right? And, I've always had a great deal of sympathy and empathy for people. I find those that are not as successful to be more interesting and more evolved in many ways. Their priorities are right. Gaining insight and perspective from all of the people that are around you make you more well-rounded and more effective as a leader. Leading with humility, being inquisitive, don't assume that you know everything. Take a holistic approach to everything that you're doing, right? Try to understand the story. In business, work as a team, as a boss, understand your employees as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
That's really important. Good leadership is not knowing everything and dictating your views, right? Good leadership is listening, coordinating, and uniting your team to rise and become successful together. So a good leader inspires others to be great, right? It lifts others to achieve. And you're going to get more out of your employees if if they respect you and you respect them. Um, I say this all the time. Like, a good leader doesn't take credit for the work of their employees, right? You have to be able to take credit for assembling and coordinating the team to get it done. So I think everything stems from there. And the reason why I start with that to answer your question is because if you have toxic leadership, there isn't a whole lot you're going to be able to do to change that culture into a non-flicked culture.
And that's how you win the Stanley Cup, right?
It is.
I know it is, actually. It
Teamwork.
is.
It's parenting, right? Teamwork makes the dream work.
It does. I don't know if
Yeah,
you've ever read the book by Ken Dryden called The Game.
I didn't. No.
It's a great book, of how the team stayed together in a period where they were having referendums to separate from Canada, but they had to keep the team together, French, English, and whatnot. It's a great book. So, as you know,
Remember
in
books very well.
LA, the premise is to keep them wanting more so you can do a sequel. So
Yep.
I just have one more question to ask you
Sure.
on this part.
Yeah.
Um, a client a few years ago, after 2020, said to me, he said, Mark, the year 2020, the pandemic year, was the year that flew by slowly. And I thought, what a great line. And here we are already in 2024. 2020 seems to a lot of people like yesterday and years ago at the same time.
Yeah.
So with all that's happened and all that said, can you share with us what you're most grateful for and also what you're most hopeful for?
Yeah. I mean, I was most grateful for the pause. In some strange way, it felt cathartic just to slow down.
Right.
It was a forced shutdown. So from everything, from the daily grind, you're sitting out in your car at 7 in the morning and you get back at 7 at night and you don't have time to do anything, and kids' activities, and you're running around, and before you know it, they're adults and you haven't spent any time together. So spending time, really quality time with my family, was something that I'll never forget.
Mm.
Because we couldn't go anywhere, it's funny. We sat down every night and we watched The Amazing Race, like 20 seasons of it, whatever it was, right? And because we couldn't go anywhere, so it was might as well watch other people go somewhere. And it was really nice. But I think that my hope is that COVID gave everyone more perspective, remembering to live, remembering to be kind and compassionate. Um, it also, I think, it accelerated the integration of the work-life balance. And, look, we're talking today, right? And, we're very casual, and this is who I am outside of work, and this is how I am during work now.
Right.
So I think that, the both lives are intertwined. So, which I think is a good thing. And what I mean by that is that you should be the same person in your personal life as you are in your professional one. Now, obviously there are certain things you shouldn't be doing, in your professional life that you would.
Right.
But no, that the two are intertwined. So, I think that we're going to see more of that.
I think intertwined is a good word, because I always understood work-life balance, but I didn't like it because you do work and then you stop for life, and then you stop life to go to work type of thing. It is intertwined, and it gives people the opportunity to do something on a Saturday when they're busy on a Friday or whatever, stuff like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
So
And I find the quality of work is going to be much better too. Look, if you have to be somewhere with your kids or with your family, or something does come up, you've got to go to the doctor, whatever it is, knowing that you could just take that time and then work and do what you have to do when you get back.
right.
Your focus isn't taken away. If you're sitting at your office from 9 to 5 and your focus, oh gosh, I have this doctor's appointment, I've got to get to it, I can't coordinate it, when am I going to find the time? But if they're all intertwined together, then it's fine. You just live your life. You get up in the morning, you do what you need to do, but on both personal and on the professional platform.
Yeah, well said. So let's hope for continued that. And thanks for sharing all that, and thanks for two Montrealers, not me, but you and your wife, being leaders who care, man. Congratulations.
Oh, thanks, Mark, and thanks for having me. I enjoyed this.